In the holiday season, there's an aura of excitement. This newfound whimsy typically begins in November, where we start going from festive to extra festive by December. A big component to the seasonal atmosphere are Christmas movies. I'm sure you can name at least 5 from the top of your head. While Christmas movies may come in many forms, including comedy, drama, action, and even horror, they're considered their own movie genre. A big reason for this is how they not only share the same aesthetic, but the plots of these movies follow the same formula. The reason for this is because the Charles Dickens novel, A Christmas Carol, has revolutionized the Christmas genre, and as a result, the festive movies that we love so much are different flavors of the story. We all know that there have been plenty of film adaptations of the original novel, but even films that aren't direct remakes of A Christmas Carol are, at its core, modified versions of the story. We're gonna look into how some iconic Christmas movies originate from the same source. So now, let's get started. To start, we need to understand what exactly A Christmas Carol is. A Christmas Carol was released in 1843, and in the Victorian era, Christmas festivities were emerging, especially with the revived popularity of caroling. Charles Dickens was inspired to write this story from his own experience of going through financial hardships in his childhood, and from witnessing the immense poverty in Victorian England. A Christmas Carol focuses on Ebenezer Scrooge, who is selfish and cold-hearted. On top of that, he also despises Christmas, seeing it as a holiday of needless spending and frivolity. On Christmas Eve, after years of mistreating the people around him, he's met with the ghost of Christmas past, present, and the ghost of Christmas yet to come, where he learns how his selfishness negatively affected others. He learns to be more kind, compassionate, and of course, learns the true meaning of Christmas. This is one of those stories that have become a staple. So you could say that a work like this sparked the era of modern Christmas stories and created the media that we all enjoy during the holiday season. Now, on the topic of festive themed movies, I'm gonna divide certain movies based on their own genre and general tone, because regardless of the direction, Charles Dickens contributed by proxy. So starting with Exhibit A, whimsical movies. These are the dramatic and/or fantasy Christmas films. While it's been confirmed that It's a Wonderful Life is loosely based on the Dickens story, it's foremost a film adaptation of the 1944 book The Greatest Gift, which also was inspired by A Christmas Carol, so yeah. In both of these works, the central characters find that reaching financial success doesn't guarantee internal happiness, but instead of seeing 3 ghosts, protagonist George Bailey sees a parallel universe where he was never born, and realizes how important he really is to the people around him. He might not live a perfect life, but it doesn't need to be perfect. Considering this movie came out 1 year after the end of World War II, the theme of hopeful transformation reflected the general attitude of the time. Not to mention that It's a Wonderful Life established the popularity of the Christmas movie genre. Miracle on 34th Street utilizes a plot of having a faith in Christmas, where another main character has a cynical view on festivities. This movie specifically centers on believing in Santa Claus, which could represent believing in the magic of Christmas and how it brings people together. Much like Scrooge, these characters change their views on holidays and learn to embrace them. Questioning the belief in Santa was also the central conflict in The Polar Express. An unnamed hero begins questioning his belief in Santa Claus, and possibly because of this, a magic train comes to his house. He ignores all sorts of don't talk to strangers teachings and heads to the North Pole. To compare this movie to A Christmas Carol, the story focuses on the importance of Christmas beyond material things. There are even some ghosts that show up, one of which may or may not be the conductor, though I'd guess he's more of a metaphorical spirit. The Polar Express and A Christmas Carol have this eerie vibe to it that I can't really put into words. I guess all the ghost references are a big part of it, but I remember feeling a bit unnerved at how strangely quiet the North Pole is. Despite all the strangeness, there's similar endpoints of emotional growth and new understandings of what is important. A Christmas Carol itself is a fantasy novel, so naturally a story like this can be easily translated into other fantasy works, but it can also be adapted into works with slightly edgier tones, as shown in Exhibit B, direct comedies. These are the comedy films where Christmas is a big focus on the plot. One story that was massively inspired by the Charles Dickens novel was How the Grinch Stole Christmas, written by Dr. Seuss. All the trademarks are there. A loner who despises Christmas learns the importance of it. This was showcased in the legendary TV special, and of course, the controversial 2000 movie, where we get an explanation on why the Grinch isn't a fan of Christmas. After being alienated by his own community, he lives off the grid. But still, It has been noted that the Grinch is a relatable introvert icon. His viewpoints change after finding that the Who's accept that they don't need presents for Christmas, despite what they say at the beginning, and the Grinch's heart grows 3 times its size and is then redeemed. The live-action film was pretty controversial for including adultish humor, but one movie that's about 5% more family-friendly was Home Alone. This was one of those trend-making movies, given that this became the most successful live-action comedy for 2 decades. Family movies would never be the same since. In a standard John Hughes Chicago suburb, a kid feeling isolated in his own family is accidentally left behind as they head to their Christmas vacation. This is reason number 463 to avoid early morning flights. Home Alone resembles A Christmas Carol, with home burglars being substitutes for ghosts, as they still teach what Christmas is really about, which by the way is cartoony violence, and learning to be more kind and compassionate to people that could be simply misunderstood, as well as appreciating what you have. Home Alone shows that the family comedy genre was one that could be strongly lucrative. These type of movies flourished throughout the 90s. Another 90s comedy was The Santa Claus, though it's one of those films that people are really into or they can't stand. I remember The Santa Claus being played all the time on TV during the Christmas season, and personally, I felt indifferent to it. This movie has the typical workaholic dad trope, where he acts as a stand-in for Ebenezer Scrooge. He's cynical, doesn't care too much about holidays, and all the rest. So weirdly enough, the actual Santa Claus falls off a roof, and he's long gone. This is a PG-rated Disney film, by the way, but the plot has him becoming Santa, since in this universe, there's this weird rule about a Santa Claus. Get it? I've never heard anyone say that this was their favorite Christmas movie, but it was successful enough to become a trilogy. I don't have any recollection of the third film, but even then I could say that Jack Frost as a villain was its best quality. He acts so messy, and I could see him getting involved in a lot of social media drama if this movie were set today. A movie that seems to be a favorite for Christmas time is Elf, where not one, but 2 Scrooge-type characters learn about the importance of Christmas. But in this movie, there's basically a wave of Scrooges globally. There's just no Christmas spirit anymore. After Buddy the Elf finds that his biological dad is in the naughty list, he represents a spirit of his dad's past where he tries to redeem him, with the help of a lot of physical comedy. Again, the message is to find joy and appreciation in life, especially during the Christmas season. This is not only a Christmas movie, but also a bit of a romantic comedy, though the love story isn't the central conflict. But there are Christmas movies that centers on love, which would lead into Exhibit C, Christmas rom-coms. And no, I will not be mentioning the 5 million identical Lifetime movies, but I am going to start with the very 1980s action film, which, yes, is a Christmas movie, even though it was released in July. Once again, a character who's cynical and distanced everyone around him undergoes emotional redemption in the midst of wrongdoings as a group of haunting thieves rudely barge in at an office Christmas party. All of this is Severus Snape's fault, but the movie's themes matching A Christmas Carol is enough to have it alongside Love Actually and The Others. Love Actually shows 9 intertwined stories that focus on different manifestations of love. At least that's how it appears on the surface. Around the 2010s, there have been countless BuzzFeed-esque articles criticizing on how Love Actually is a story about stalking, inappropriate workplace situations, etc. Whether or not these topics showed up in the film are up to interpretation. One aspect that I noticed in this movie is the one guy that takes too long for things. The gift wrapping scene shows him doing way too much, and I would say that he does that on purpose. He knows an expensive necklace is intended for a side piece, so he has fun with some trolling, and possibly is trying to send a message to not do this very bad thing. And at the airport, he distracts security so that a kid can say one last goodbye, which is probably the most unrealistic scene in this movie, or any movie for that matter. And by extension of this being modeled after A Christmas Carol, the guy that takes too long for stuff might be a ghost or some sort of spirit. Yes, I'm reaching, but I'm still correct because I said so. At the same time, these stories display the Christmas season as a time of connection and personal growth. There aren't that many movies that are so divided like how Love Actually is, so you're free to share your thoughts in the comments. Another semi-divided rom-com is The Holiday, which centers on house switching. And I didn't know that was a thing until I saw this film. So if you're willing to swap your living space, you have the possibility of staying in a gigantic luxury mansion for free. I'm just saying. The links between this and A Christmas Carol is based on how these leads experience loneliness after a painful breakup and a painful rejection before Christmas of all times. But much like Scrooge, these protagonists who aren't getting into the holiday spirit get a newfound appreciation for life with the help of finding love. It's a story that's been told countless times, but The Holiday is nonetheless considered one of the quintessential comfort movies. The cottage alone is a Pinterest fantasy, and it's evident that the holiday season is an ideal setting for romantic comedy, as shown in films like Last Christmas, Holiday, and Love Hard. Some cynical people might roll their eyes at the idea of a Christmas rom-com, but what's life without a little festivities? So as we've seen, Christmas movies typically follow the same storyline, and a good reason for this is that they come from the same source. But as long as we get a good story from it, I don't mind this at all. Nonetheless, watching your favorite comfort movies is simply fun and a whimsical experience, especially in this time of year. What is a movie that gets you in the festive mood? Me and this peach would love to know. Thank you all for watching, and I hope to see you all in the next one.